All righty, so who wants to kick off? John, is it you?
Sure, I'll kick it off. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is John Cahill. I work with JLL here in our New York City Midtown office. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Nancy for inviting me and having me here to this program. Also want to just thank everybody for participating. I've been in the life sciences brokerage world in New York Metro for about 16 years now, and this is great to see everybody coming together as a region. I've always said over the years, it's not individual markets and areas that are going to compete with the other major clusters in the country. And so it's great to see everybody here from Connecticut, Westchester, New Jersey, New York. So that's great. But jumping into our slides here, our JLL research department, we've got a great team of people locally, regionally, and nationally. I'm sure everybody has probably seen our U.S. Life Sciences Outlook. We've got great people. Matter of fact, just in this year here, 2021, we've hired almost 300 people exclusive to our life sciences practice group, some of which are key research people sitting here in New York City. This first slide here just highlights the life sciences and healthcare, private equity and venture capital funding. I think in the previous panels you've seen and heard some of these numbers, but these numbers are not only trending up, they're just all-time highs, which are great data points and great indicators for the growth and the opportunity in the region. Just to highlight a few here for the New York metro area. Capsule is not a true life sciences company, but they raised $300 million. Opentrons most recently raised $200 million. And you've got Affimed Therapeutics at the bottom raising $170 million. So I think I heard someone on an earlier panel mention these numbers and these money raises are much bigger, than some of these historical Series A, B, and C, D rounds. Companies typically raise $30, $40, $50 million. It's nice to see bigger numbers happening in this market as compared to Boston and the other strong, mature clusters.
So now I'm going to surprise John with a question. He was expecting this to come later. But given the trend that we see here, John, are you expecting this to continue to explode? I mean, literally explode in terms of what's happening in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut region?
Absolutely. The trends and the indicators, again, this all ties to employment. It ties to company formation. New York Metro, and I know New Jersey and Connecticut and Westchester and other areas have incubators and graduation space operators. So all of the fundamentals are now finally here. It's taken a little while to come together, but instead of companies leaving and people going elsewhere to other key strong markets and clusters, they're actually staying put and building and growing their companies here.
So let me just ask the other panelists, and again, we didn't plan this, but do you have anything that you'd like to comment about this slide, this level of activity?
I have seen, enormous amount of growth in the whole region. Let me just say hello first, and my name's Sue Cranian. I'm with JP Morgan. We have a group at JP Morgan that's in the commercial bank that is covering life science companies from their earliest company formation all the way through, IPO and commercialization and beyond. So I have been working with companies in this space for the last 6 years, with JP Morgan my whole career. And just coming from my seat, banking companies in New York in 2016, I kind of raised my hand when there was a pilot of this team that was in San Francisco and Boston and San Diego, and I said, I think this company's doing this in New York. New Jersey was covered in the pilot, New York was not, and started to get involved in the community here and see what was going on. And from that time in 2016 to now is like, you can't recognize the level of activity and focus of opportunity here. So that's.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
Certainly. My name's Mary Howard, and I run Design Technologies, and we create programs, boot camps for ventures who are coming out of programs like the I-Corps program, and then going into incubators. So we're a little niche program that's on the commercialization path for these. So I'm a serial entrepreneur by background, and one of the things that struck me 10 years ago when we first came to New York after being in New Jersey was the incredible depth of the bench in New York City research. It is just extraordinary. We have about 10 times as many applications as we admit, and we did not see a repeat application for about 8 years. So that we had 20 ventures who came into the program every year, and that was something that, with my background in Boston doing startups at MIT, I just never imagined, and it just seemed bottomless.
So when we talk about trends, which is what this panel's about, I think one strong message is come to this region because it's exploding. And if you want the synergy of being with other companies that are starting up and amazing universities and amazing hospitals, this is the place. I didn't want to interrupt you, but if you want to...
No, that was perfect. The labor and the workforce is most important. The talent is here, and it just continues to grow. Next slide, please. Again, everybody's seen and heard these numbers. New York is number 2 to Boston in NIH funding. For 2021, we haven't even finished out the year just yet, and we're at a record number. And the top 5 groups that are being awarded these funds, you've got Columbia, NYU, you've got Mount Sinai, Weill Cornell, and Sloan Kettering. So again, the money is coming into New York, and it's actually staying. One of the key trends that has happened that's reversed is that people are actually staying here now, and so they have the money raised, they can come out of the university or the institution and go into an incubator and actually stay put in New York and build and grow the company here.
Right, so one of the things that I was very happy to hear, I'm becoming a quick new expert in the area, right? But one of the things that really made me feel great, actually, was this is the future. And it's truly a pipeline of a whole industry, and it's being developed here, and it's staying here. It's not going to Florida, it's not going to Tennessee, it's not going to Texas, at least not yet. Right? So, and to me, that's bucking the trend, and it's just wonderful, wonderful news.
I talk to a lot of the VC firms in my business development role, and sometimes they acquired the license from a university and they're deciding where to put it. And I think the proximity to the PIs at the institutions here is a driving factor, that now that they have the opportunities to grow the companies here, that they like the idea of the scientific founders continuing to stay close to the development as it moves along.
Right. Mary, compared to your experience in the Boston area, what makes New York different?
Well, I brought some data that actually, because we were fortunate to have the opportunity to work in New York City as well as Connecticut and Westchester, and there are differences between the different communities. And there's also, as you're talking about, the differences between Boston and New York metro area. What I experienced in Boston is that many of the ventures that are funded by large VCs are coming out of a very few research institutions, primarily MIT and Harvard. Because there are so many research institutions here, that's part of what drives the bigger bench. But I would also say that what's different here is the extraordinary international aspect of the researchers. They have strong connections internationally, so they're building global companies. So you're going to see people thinking about that from the very beginning and collaborating internationally. You're going to see a lot more women. The research that came out from New York City health business leaders about the number of women that are being funded in digital health is supported by data that we're seeing. Where women are coming in with less money, they're leaving with more. And we expect that's just really a reflection of where the pipeline is within the research institutions, that in biology fields, you're seeing more women. You're seeing more immigrants, and that's reflected in who's going into the businesses.
That's fantastic. So is this your last slide, or do we have more?
I believe there's one more slide. Next slide. Again, just reiterating the job growth and the number of companies that just continue to grow in the New York metro area.
So the graph on the right, the green one, I mean, that's a pretty steep curve, right? Going from 2017 to 2020. So in terms of trends, you know, one of the questions that I had for the panel as we were preparing for this is, why New York? What makes New York so special, right? What are the things that support the trends? Because obviously the trend is a lot more activity, yeah, and it seems like it's being supported by the amount of talent, the amount of institutions, the amount of energy. Mary, you talked about the international input, which is great. But also, you know, there's a tremendous emphasis in New York on opportunities for people, be they women, be they minorities. You know, that's sort of what New York is become about now. And do you think that's also one of the drivers?
Yes.
It's like a cross-examination. Right? All right. So who's up next with their slides?
So I was asked that question of, you know, what's kind of driving, what's a trend that's driving growth, and since I've been in this seat and you know, started out being a New York banker, you know, developing, you know, business in the life science space, and that has since moved into a national role. So I see in the whole region of, you know, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, something that is a trend that I definitely see increasing is the use of all kinds of digital applications in this space. So inclusive of, you know, some of the companies I just put on the slide are our clients that have an element of digital, you know, digital focus.
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm sorry? Sorry, so digital therapeutics being, you know, Click Therapeutics being a great example of a company that's using software to treat disease. And the approved product, if you don't know about Click, is they're using software applications on your mobile phone right now to treat smoking cessation, but in development for applications that will treat migraines, insomnia, depression, obesity. So really exciting. But what I wanted to say is coming to New York. So why New York for that? You know, the tech talent that resides here is you know, second to none, and also the ability to situate these companies without needing, you know, large wet lab space, but you know, the ability to utilize all different types of real estate in New York. So Click, another company in New York that actually started biolabs is Feel More Labs, which is a therapeutic that's using a device to use sound waves to treat primarily anxiety right now, to write to the cranial nerve by putting this device like behind your ears. And starting at, no, I'm sorry, I said that was starting at biolabs. It's not starting at biolabs. I'm incorrect myself. It's in that neighborhood. Another one that I was going to mention, Redesign, is started biolabs. And that is now moving into the, you know, drug discovery and using AI in the drug discovery application. So Redesign is a smaller one that is developing like simulated protein models to draw targets, therapeutic targets off of that model. Semaphore, being a company that went public this year, is a company. When I first started in this space, I was introduced to Eric Schatt in 2016 when he was still up at Mount Sinai, and now, you know, it's a public company that is so exciting, and using, you know, genomics data and clinical data to have masses of models that can be run to develop individualized therapeutics and drug discovery. So super exciting. But you know, talk about like the talent need of software engineers and all of the tech talent that, you know, can be pulled from this region to, you know, to keep that company here in Connecticut now. And then on the digital diagnostic side, Page Therapeutics, if you've been following that one, is the first FDA-approved digital device. So they're a digital diagnostic device that can diagnose prostate cancer digitally. So that's going to usher in a whole new wave of digital diagnostics, and that's, you know, came out of MSK and is here in New York with strong collaboration. So those are kind of some of the examples of New York being a place where these companies can really thrive. And I see the trend is that more and more investment dollars are being directed to all of these type of, you know, companies with a digital element. And as more and more dollars are directed here, the ability of New York to, you know, play a bigger role in attracting these companies, I think, will continue to drive more activity here.
So I guess, Mary, a question that I have is, you know, everything that we've heard, it's just, it sounds like the scale is probably a lot bigger than other areas. The type of activity might be similar, but there's just so much more of everything here. There's more bankers, there's more real estate, there's more universities, there's more talent. You know, and I say that humbly, but you know, the New York area just has a huge amount of talent, and that's always what's driven New York, right? I mean, do you see that? Is that?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent, but there's also specialization. You know, the digital health and the ability for that to grow in New York. Some of what we hear about is the opportunity from all of the financial software developers who are interested in making a move, and they're making a move into a medical field, and it's, you know, kind of personal investment in something they really believe in. And so we're hearing that kind of transition is also expediting this growth of digital health, that it's been easier to recruit people out of finance in New York into some of these medical digital health startups. So that's a unique kind of situation that New York has. But there are long histories of research that are done in the CNS field here, and we saw a big increase in CNS medical devices and therapeutics and diagnostics in the last couple of years. So, you know, some of the traditional areas of research strength are also showing the latest version of technology implementation. So we're seeing, you know, combinations of interplay between industries, but also just the latest version of really state-of-the-art research that's being done here.
You know, it's funny, I was just reading a biography of John D. Rockefeller. And so the first, and probably to this day the most significant medical research facility in the country has been the Rockefeller University. So I think it's very interesting that now the sort of the industry is catching up with where we were 120 years ago, right? And I assume the Rockefeller University is still a major source of, you know, ideas and, you know, generating potential businesses, which leads me to the next question. So, you know, New York is constantly rebuilding. I mean, you just see it. Anybody who's lived here for more than a minute and a half sees new buildings going up all the time, some old buildings being taken down. And with that energy and with that regeneration, does that also feed into this growing new industry? And I guess this would be a good question for you, John, because you look at it from the but for everybody, but to start with John, because you look at it from the real estate side. repurposing of buildings and establishing new buildings, like the Alexandria Center, right, on the east side, but also repurposing buildings.
Absolutely. If you look at New York City today and look at the different neighborhoods, a lot of these neighborhoods that either had difficulties or had buildings that became vacant, they've been reinvigorated, they've been redeveloped, and it's a combination of not only life sciences, just digital health companies as well. So while a digital health company might only need office space, they're important for the whole ecosystem because a big pharma might come in and acquire, say, a Page or a TrialSpark. And so what that does is that helps, obviously, the individual kind of submarkets, if you will, but developers, whether it's a healthcare company or a life sciences company, they want to go in and they want to redevelop buildings and they want to bring new product to the market. So, many neighborhoods have been completely retransformed into new areas that are bright and vibrant and exactly where people want to be. I know our JLL research department, they haven't pinpointed any exact trends. We don't have anything that we're producing just yet, but the tech explosion in New York City is something that they believe is happening with life sciences, and the life sciences explosion will continue to take off similar to tech.
So in terms of trends, right, it sounds like we're talking about technology, right? We're talking about talent, we're talking about real estate, we're talking about other institutions that feed into and allow all of this to grow and percolate. And sort of closing thoughts, does anybody want to leave some pearls of wisdom to the audience?
Yeah, I think one thing that's been an incredible insight we've seen is when these new companies get going, there's a pipeline of ideas that are being tested. John talked about the go, no go decision, right? And then you're moving them into a place where they can form to go get some money. And that is a very chaotic stage. It's a very, very chaotic stage to connect ventures to funding at that level. And I think that's a place where we're going to see continued entrance of people into New York, Connecticut. Matt McCooey was talking about the recruiting of a fund in Connecticut. And in Westchester, we heard about that from Deborah Novick. And I have a chance to work with both of them in their communities. But I think it's much simplified in a place like Cambridge, because if you have 2 universities, you have 8 major venture capitalists. They're not doing a deal a week. They may read like that in the newspaper, but they're not doing that many. They're doing 6, maybe 8. I mean, that'd be incredibly busy. So we have a different problem here, which is a scale issue on the financing at that place. And I think, I think we're going to see it's absolutely critical, these early stage companies, to get that pipeline going. We need to continue to evolve that connection between those early stage companies and the money, because as Connecticut has shown with Connecticut Innovations, you get a lot more companies being formed, you get the wheels starting to turn, and you get the companies starting to grow and hire, and then when they hire, they got to go someplace. So that very early stage, I think the model that is there in Connecticut is a really interesting one. They've been fortunate with the payoffs in the last couple of 15, 18 months, but that's a challenge for everybody.
I think we're about to be summoned, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.